Where are we? We're on Zoom. Skype Zoom. In the other building, there's a chapel. I don't know if some of you live on this side. But there's a small chapel, and in the hallway behind the chapel are a lot of icons, classic icons. And Ajahn, I don't know if you know this, but Luang Sumedho's sister, who died last year, she was a very well-known icon painter. She would get commissions in America. She would do large commissions. And like when she was in her late 80s, she was still painting. And she's always very good at it. She was an artist all her life. But she said when she painted, the tremors in her hand from old age stopped. She was just so focused on her art. And so the different spiritual vehicles, as it were, but they both appreciated each other in their spiritual aspirations. And she looked just like him. I met her. She's lived in Washington State. So there is that. Again, I guess I've just been talking again and again about these two ways of looking at life. One is the conventional reality, and one is the, as I'm just calling it for lack of a better word, Dharma reality. And I find that differentiation very important, because you can't ignore the conventional reality. We're all going to be going back into our conventional life situations, and life isn't going to say, "Oh, you were on a retreat. We'll give you a break." I'm sorry. Life just, comes at you as it does. But in this kind of situation, we can learn, and this kind of basic lesson of learning how to put the world down, not fix it, not organize it. So, although there are skills in meditation which are very helpful, just that kind of more general attitude is not always trying to get things right, but witnessing the way things are, I find very helpful. Just the suchness of the situation before I have to fix it or create something or get rid of something, all that other stuff, which isn't wrong, but just like just the suchness. And that word, the Buddha's epithet to himself, or the way he named himself, was the Tathagata, and that's the Tathagata is the such realized, or the such knowing, which is in a very odd way, And who are you? Oh, I'm the guy that's just such. It was just kind of odd way of thinking, but it's actually very true. Such realized. What are we realizing? The way things are, and that putting down of the world, not putting it down like critically, just as the non-attachment or non-grasping, is a skill that brings us to something which isn't dependent on the world. And yet we need to also be very skillful in the world. So the world is the world of shoulds and shouldn'ts. Sometimes we say, there shouldn't be any should and shouldn'ts or something like that. But like last week, I was lifting up some heavy stones to use as weights for something, and my niece said, "You shouldn't do that. This is not a good idea, Viradhammo." And so I got some of the younger monks to do it. So there's a necessity to be skillful in the world in terms of worldly dharmas. And so that part of spiritual life is the craft of living. It's just like the skills of developing better communication can be a lifetime's work. It's really hard to kind of get it right. Because, well, on one hand, you'll never get it right. Let's face it. You do your best, but where you can get it right is from intention. When the intention comes from a place which is wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature as it is, then the results socially might or might not be the way you hope they would be, but internally they're right in the sense there's no regret and no remorse. So just using life as craft, I find to be a nice analogy, a nice kind of metaphor for right speech, right action, right consumption, what you're consuming, what you're doing. And then it's not just, life isn't just, and we all do this, obviously I'm just stating what is obvious, but it's not just about having a good time or surviving today. It's like developing the skills of being a good human being. But then to come to this other possibility where, like this mindset right now, I don't have to fix it. I don't have to get rid of it. I don't have to do anything about it. It just is the way it is. The sense of relaxing, letting go, even within unpleasant states of mind, unpleasant physical states, is I think for me, like if my life isn't answering the deeper spiritual inquiry of always been a part of my life, if I'm not answering that, the rest of life is like very so what. And it's not really getting to the heart of my aspiration. But if my inner life and my contemplative life is answering the basic questions that I've always had, and those questions are being skillfully addressed and skillfully answered, then there's a kind of confidence which comes from that. And then the worldly life, I can do a lot. I can do a lot because I've answered that inner question. That's always been the reason I sort of dropped out of university and did all kinds of naughty things, experimenting as one does as a youngster, but also this kind of constant search for meaning. And then for me, the meaning has been in finding that serenity of knowing, spaciousness, non-grasping, letting go, love, all these different words. And then from that meaning, there is a sense of the purpose of the spiritual life has been fulfilled. And then the rest is kind of, you just have more and more energy and availability to the worldly dharmas. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Where like if you don't pay attention to the inner world and you don't answer those serious contemplative questions, then I think the outer world, it's hard to really be in the outer world in a skillful way because the heart hasn't been fulfilled. But once the heart has that sense of purpose and direction and fulfillment, then the outer world actually gives so much more to it because you really found what you really need in your own heart. So I don't know what contemplative spiritual aspirations bring you to the retreat or bring you to this life, but there's something, right? There's something that says there's got to be more to the life than just another experience. And what is that? And sometimes it is just like I've got a lot of fear issues, or I'm really not that great in my relationships or whatever. There is all of that, and that's important. But then that can be a foundation for something more profound. So, like, I didn't ordain as a monk to be a monk. I didn't ordain as a monk to be a Buddhist. To me, that's sort of, like you buy a car to travel. So, I don't identify as a Buddhist monk. I identify as the silence. Sure, I am a Buddhist monk conventionally, and people notice it. Some people with Anjali and some people with insect look. But that's a lovely vehicle to travel in. It's great. I mean, it's like a Lexus, I'm sure, or maybe it's a Rolls Royce. Huh? So it's a nice vehicle to travel in, but it's not the purpose isn't to be an identity, is it? Like to be so then, and that's the way Lompo Sumeru always talk about the monastic life. He says that it's a vehicle, right? Maybe it's not the best vehicle, but it's a kind of Volkswagen van. It'll get you to India, kind of thing. I identify with those things. And then so that there are different vehicles. There's the vehicle of family, there's the vehicle of motherhood, there's sometimes, unfortunately, the vehicle of chronic illness, and these are more difficult vehicles, right? But they are the conventional world that we sort of, the kind of vehicle we drive in, but then the silence of the mind knows the vehicle, right? It knows, like, monasticism is this way. It has these benefits. It has these pitfalls. It can be a lifestyle used skillfully or unskillfully. Parenthood, relationships, vocation, chronic illness, sickness, these kinds of things. And these are the different vehicles, and the vehicle changes, so all of us will get the diagnosis at one point, or whatever, and then that becomes the vehicle. And that's, okay, this is what I'm going to learn from. But if in our moments of good health, like now, and good companionship, we take this opportunity to like put the world down, really learn how to do that. I don't have to fix this. I don't have to get anywhere. I don't have to become anything. It really kind of where the mind really relaxes into an open attention to the way things are. Then we've got a refuge as more complex things come up in conventional life. And so that idea of refuge is very, very important. That's why I named that our monastery Tisarana, the refuge of Viradhammo Sangha, Buddha, awareness, knowing truth of the way things are within spiritual community. I love that idea as a human vehicle. And then that's not a monastic vehicle. Buddha knowing Dharma is like human. And you don't have to call it Buddha, you can call it whatever you want to call it, right? So that's the doctrinal thing. But awareness is cultural, it's not gender, it's not age, it's not Italian. Is the knowing Italian, right? So as you get a sense of that, what refuge really means, and you come to refuge like always, just like these simple encouragements I give, like that listen to sound. Sound is like this. And there's the world. The world is the sound, but the knowing is not the world. Then apply it to fury, or whatever you want. It's more difficult. You get disappointed, you get betrayed, or there is deep loss. These tragic things, but much of life isn't tragic. It's just ho hum, just kind of very ordinary. And in the ordinary, the mind can really just kind of fall asleep into habitual thinking. So to awaken in the ordinary kind of is what we're doing on a retreat. It's very ordinary in some ways. Nothing's happening actually. I think someone had a swim, right? The most exciting thing. So we make it kind of very ordinary without slideshows, or we could do, what are they called, PowerPoint presentations. I've never done that. Buddhism is this, and if you compare it to there, and it was in this age, we're just not going there. It's a very simple nothing. And you have your own mind and your own kind of agenda, and then I say a few things, but I won't say that much, and you got the whole day. And then what happens? Well, then you're challenged. What is, you don't have distractions. What is refuge? And actually the simplicity of it allows you to see the restlessness of the mind and the mind's needing to do something or become something, and you keep knowing, oh, that's an object. The need to do something is an object. The need to get rid of something is an object. And there's the knowing. So the mind kind of keeps relaxing and opening into the way things are, hopefully. Hopefully, that's the hope. And then, you kind of, like the way the mind works is, right, this is day Wednesday, and we leave day Friday. And so now the mind starts to think about day Saturday. When you were on the last day Wednesday, then you were probably thinking about the beginning of the retreat. Yeah? So at the end of the retreat, you start to think about next retreat next year. And so the mind's always like, it's never satisfied, right? It's always moving into another drama. And that's the world. That's a world of becoming and the world of time. And this awareness is a Kalika Dhamma. It's timeless. So as you contemplate the very nature of time being constructed by thought, the very sense of like self being constructed by thought, and you let go of thinking in terms of time, in terms of self. You just let go into listening. You start to intuit the eternal, the silence of presence, and that, hopefully, that would be where your curiosity goes. What's that about? I've been mucking about with a world of things for a long, long time, and I will continue to do that. But what's the silence about? Where's that at? And hopefully, so that becomes a kind of curiosity rather than a desire to get that. And curiosity will then. Time is really important in the spiritual life, isn't it? Because our self-identity is in time, and that's necessary in a conventional realm. But the time and craving are conjoined, isn't it? Like craving is that which wants to get something or trying to get rid of something. It's very much bound up in time. But in the present moment awareness of the way things are, time stops. Clock moves. Have you ever done that? Have you ever looked at a clock? This is what monks do. You just look at the clock. Okay, when is the next moment? It's a very interesting... We're all kind of batty in a monastery. It's actually very interesting. Okay, when is the next moment? And you never find it. All you find is present moment stillness. And yet conventionally there is the next moment, and it is time for dinner, and so on and so forth. So it's a paradox, that like the intersection of the timeless with time. T.S. Eliot's poem. What is it? Man's curiosity searches past and future and clings to that dimension, but to apprehend the intersection of the timeless with time is the occupation of a saint. No occupation either, but a life lived in love, ardor, selflessness, and self-surrender. I think that's right. Yeah, that one. That's a really cool poem, right? and yeah, the kind of the conventional realm is in time, and yet we only know the present moment. That's the great mystery. So now, rather than trying to figure that out as physics with multiverse theories of where physics goes, we're looking at that experientially, experientially. And time is actually an object in awareness. It's a felt thing, or it's a perceived thing. I would say it's a perceived thing. So, if you have a painful knee halfway through the meditation, then it's a long meditation. Yeah? And yet if you look at each moment, you can't find. So that's a perception of length or of duration because it's painful. And then if you are really enjoying something, time just flies by. And that's a perception of time. So time itself is a perception. So like in meditation, when when you're feeling restless at 30 minutes, and it's an hour sitting, say, then that time will arise, perception of time. When will it end? This is a long sitting. This is a horribly long sitting. Whatever. And then so time defines self. I'm like, should I move or not? Shouldn't I come to this meditation? Should I stayed in yoga nidra? And so time, self, they're all kind of one construct. And then at any given moment, you just, this is what it feels like. This is what an eternally unpleasant feeling feels like. This is a long meditation. You actually make it conscious. This is a really long meditation. And then what happens to that? Now, obviously, if there's pain, then that's a different, but quite often it's not. That's so bad. So this is a really long meditation. I'm not getting anywhere. And then there's silence. Where's to go? So you're just doing the same thing all the time, awakening, awakening, awakening. But obviously some things are hard to awaken to because they're so insidiously believable. Doubts and self-doubts are very believable, aren't they? You really get caught up in that. And so the training in awakening, or the training in taking refuge, is gradual. You're constantly doing it and getting better and better at it. And yet it's the same thing. It's not like you're like scoring more points. You're just awakening more constantly and understanding that what the awakened mind is. That's the theory. Let's do some meditation.